So the thing about doing reviews is I have to get comfortable switching my life around these different things. Like with smartphones, one day I'm using a folding phone, the next day I'm using a flip phone, and the next day I'm using a flagship and then a budget phone. And I've just gotten used to switching. It's comfortable. Same thing with cars. One day I'm driving a pickup truck, the next day I'm driving a tiny electric car with no trunk. And I've just gotten comfortable with switching and moving my entire life into a new vehicle to really feel what it's like to live with it. But in between those review devices is the daily driver. And now I'm going to review my daily driver. So this is the car that I go back to in between testing all of the different cars that you get to see on the Autofocus channel. And you might have seen the video that I did about a year ago when I first got it. In my belief, this is the best car in the world. I literally believe it's the best car in the world. And I'm super lucky to be able to drive what I believe is the best car out there. But now, you know, it's been 15,000 miles and I've had maintenance and I've had the ups and the downs, and it's not perfect, believe it or not. And so we'll get to all of that in a second, but just for the basics, let's just recap what this is. This is a 992 generation 911 Turbo S, 2024 model, jet black metallic. Yes, it's dirty. I'm not even gonna apologize for that. This is New Jersey. In the winter, every car that I live with ends up looking like this after not that long. There's salt on the roads and everything, but hey, when you drive a car, it ends up looking like you drove the car. So it's got some carbon fiber bits on it. It does have the aero kit. The wheels are powder coated black. The brakes are painted red, but there's a little bit of carbon fiber here, a little bit of carbon trim there, and a little bit more aero back here. If you want all the full spec details, you can watch that original video. I kind of love how it's turned out. It's mine. There's a little bit of a stripe on the front if you want a little bit of custom contrast between matte and glossy, but that's about it. It's a rear-engined, gas-powered sports car. Now, the last thing I want to do is bore you with like specs and things that you could get from other videos on this car already. So here's how I want to approach this is, when I first got this car and I had my order placed and I was all giddy and ready waiting for it, I watched basically every video, I watched every video on the internet that existed of this car and the last generation and a bunch of other cars in its price class, but basically everything I could watch. And just like my first video ever, once I got it and started using it, there are some things that I learned that I didn't find in those other videos, some things that I actually was surprised by. So I'm gonna do those things. So first of all, how many miles per gallon do you think this gas car gets? Go ahead, you can place your guesses in the comment section below. So like any other car, it depends on how you drive, obviously, the city versus highway mileage, but basically it's landing somewhere between the teens and the mid-20s miles per gallon. And that actually means that with its 16.5 gallon gas tank, I essentially get the exact same range as the Tesla Model S Plaid that I came from. That on a full charge versus this on a full tank, 300 to 330 miles. Obviously this is gonna road trip way better because the gas car fills up in a minute or two, but that's a fun fact that I didn't know. It's also right now running on winter tires because those do way better in the winter, colder temperatures here. So these are P0 winters. They're a little bit less sticky and get a little bit better range than the Pilot Sport 4S's I have on it when it's hot out, but there's your first fun fact. But now my second fun fact is the size of this car is kind of perfect. It's a combination of the fact that, all right, I'm not telling them to do this every time I record, they just do. Chill. The combination of being a rear engine car instead of mid-engine and being, you know, a big but small car at the same time, it's a really fascinating balance. So first of all, storage-wise, you do have a large front trunk. Let me pop that. Oh, actually, I'm gonna close that because there is a fun feature, and I'm just gonna get salt all over my hands to show you this. If you wanna unlock it, you just swipe just like that. That unlocks the front trunk. But that's a pretty decent sized front trunk. I'll put the cubic liters or whatever measurement helps you visualize that here, but that's 2 duffel bags. That's a full-size carry-on and then some, and a backpack on top. It's good. I've got my my air compressor over there in case I ever need it. Hopefully I don't, knock wood. But that's really, really nice to have, because then when I'm traveling, I can put stuff in there, and when I get in the car, there's also a whole bunch more stuff right behind this front seat. So pop this forward, and technically, okay, yeah, those are back seats, but that's not real leg room, so I don't want to put people back there. So if you have so much stuff that you filled up the front trunk, you can then go ahead and put more bags and storage right there behind you, and the engine is yet even further behind. So yes, there is plenty of storage for a sports car, and a lot of people who've driven 911s of the past would say this is a big 911. Totally agreed. But then you get inside, and the way it drives is still very much like a compact car. If you've driven a bunch of full-size cars, try this. Just go ahead and reach out to the side and see how far you are from touching the other side of your car. In a lot of cars, you're not even close. My arm still bent is touching the other side of this car. It's a compact cabin, but yet somehow has the roomiest footwell of any car I've driven in this class. Your foot can just kind of go way up into the sill like that, which is awesome. I can fully extend my leg. That's not a small thing. I'm a 6'3" person. I've driven a lot of sports cars that do not have enough foot room for me to be comfortable in them. And it's just convenient that the one that I daily drive, I can fit in it. So the size of the car, both an interesting pro and con. It's a nice balance. Number 3, the maintenance of living with it. So I've had exactly one scheduled maintenance visit so far, one oil change, 15,000 miles. It was free, it was included. So it's been pretty great as far as maintenance. My EVs, I didn't have to do anything, which is even better, obviously, but the oil changes was basically pain-free, bring it in for a day and they do it. The other thing is, I did have one recall on this car. If you've read about the 992 generation Porsches, you know that the center lock wheels had a recap. So I got this nice envelope in the mail and I opened it up and it said, hey, stop driving your car now, because the wheels could fall off, and that would be really bad if they did. So I stopped driving the car, and then you bring it into the service center and they inspect them and they go, oh, okay, yours were not in the batch that were affected, so you can go ahead and drive your car again. Kind of weird, technically counts as a recall. You probably didn't see any headlines about it because it's not a headline-worthy recall, but that is a thing that happened and nothing bad happened. Now, before I get into the car, I just want to kind of look at it one more time because it's a really good looking car. I think you've gotten the right car when you get out your car and start to walk away and then look back real quick at it and you feel really good about what you look back at. Yeah, that's me every time. Now this next take, I'm just going to preface by saying it's a bit more of a controversial opinion, a bit more of a hot take, and that is that this car is not very digital. It's missing a bunch. It's closer to the analog side in the world of cars. Now, before you go crazy, because there's a lot of sports cars people watching this going, what are you talking about? That's one of the most technically advanced sports cars ever made, especially compared to other 911s. It's got rear wheel steer, it's got active aero, it's got a bunch of different drive modes, it's got incredible traction control. Yeah, of course this is a high-tech car. But when you consider all of the other cars you could get in this price range, just the whole other wide world of cars, right? A lot of them have way more creature comforts that are very tech in their ways. Hear me out. The roof, for example, a lot of cars have like a electrochromic tint or something like that. This doesn't have it. It has a shade that you can electronically close or open. Fine, not a big deal. An expensive car like this with a bunch of cameras all over the place, you would think would have a dash cam built in. It does not. I actually bought a dash cam. This is the Thinkware, I forget the name. It's like the X7 something something. I'll put a link below. But I had that wired up because this car does not have a built-in dash cam. There is no wireless charger for your phone. So it does have wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, but down here where you put your phone, there's 2 USB-C ports. I had to buy this little cable right here. Actually, I think the 992.2 refresh of this generation car does put a wireless charger there, but this one doesn't have it, so wired charging only. There is also obviously no full self-driving. It does have some basic traffic-aware cruise control and lane keep assist stuff going on there, but not that I'd care anyway. I'm not going to full self-drive in this car, but you get my point. The last big point is this car takes a while to warm up in the winter. When you daily drive it in the winter, you remember that all the other expensive EVs have a nice app that you can just click and just warm them up in your garage or wherever you are. This car doesn't have that. The Porsche does have an app where you can find the car's GPS location and see basic stuff like your last tire temperature or tire pressures or your last trip length or whatever. It's basic stuff, but yeah, not a lot of that sort of creature comfort tech when owning this car. But that's not why you buy this car. You buy this car to drive it. I love driving, and I love driving this car a lot. I'm not going to give you the top gear. I do write for Top Gear, but I'm not going to give you the Top Gear breakdown of driving dynamics on a track. What I will tell you is this is kind of the ultimate street car setup, and that makes it the ultimate road tripper. And I've done lots of road trips in this car. So I pretty recently have done, actually every year I do this road trip that is, it's actually Ultimate Frisbee related. It's New York to Boston to Montreal and back. So on a Saturday morning, we'll head out from New York to Boston. That's a nice 4 or 5 hour drive. And then we'll play a game. And then the next day we'll drive from Boston all the way up to Montreal, Canada. We'll play a game there. And then Sunday night after the game, we drive from Montreal all the way back to New York home. And I would not rather do that in any other car but this one. It's just sick. It's great. So here's the little dial, right? So there's a couple different personalities. The normal mode in this car, which is honestly, it's not my favorite. I don't really drive it in normal mode very often, but if you drive it in normal mode, it's the softest suspension, the softest steering, and the least aggressive shifting. Obviously, the PDK is incredibly smart, and it gets you the best gas mileage. So it'll cruise in low RPM, high gear, and the valves are closed, so it's quiet, and you can just sort of cruise out of the neighborhood in normal mode. Then you hit this, you hear a little bit of a different tone, and now you're in sport mode. Sport mode is basically how I think normal people will drive this car most of the time on most streets. The suspension, still pretty light, but with PDCC, Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control, you can switch it to a sportier, stiffer suspension. The anti-roll bars get a little more firm. Everything is a little bit more responsive, and the car kind of shrinks around you. At least that's the way it feels. But now, obviously, revs will go higher. Gas mileage won't be as good, but this is the sort of natural version of the car. And then there is also Sport Plus, which extends the front spoiler, so there is a little bit of active aero on this car. It also rises up the rear spoiler and gives you the most aggressive version of PDK. I kind of would even want it to be a little bit more aggressive, but again, it's great on the street. And then there is also, if you want to count this as tech, there's a wet mode. And wet mode, which there's a funny thing, there is actually microphones in the wheel wells of the car, so when it detects and hears that you're driving on a wet road by all the water spinning up into the wheel well, it'll tell you to turn on wet mode. And that will give you the least aggressive version of PDK with the least torque, so there's no slip, the wing comes up, you have the most traction, and that's wet mode when it's raining. So yeah, this car is fairly technically advanced when it comes to driving features, but you know, like you said, you don't really get it to focus on the tech too much. You just grab that steering wheel and drive it, and when you do, there's not a whole lot else like it. It's a great car at everything, handles well. I'm not going to even bore you with that. I got this car thinking it would be great at that because I watched all the other videos. They're right. It's great. I do talk about a lot of other cars, and this setup in the middle here, which is some combination of buttons and screen, I think Porsche did a pretty good job. I do hate the piano black gloss in every single car, and I hate it here too. I just wish this could be, you know, carbon fiber or something not fingerprinty, but other than that, like these really satisfying switches. You can see the bezels here on the screen, but at night this looks like it might as well be OLED. Like this all looks really high quality. And then you have these switches up here, obviously, your traction control, your hazards. Nice. You have your exhaust, open or close those valves. And you also have the ability to rise up that front axle. Front axle lift is an option. It's basically on every single one of these cars. But other than that, you actually can heat and cool at the same time. Kind of feels like it's warm, but also there's a breeze at the same time. It's interesting, but it's great. There's also a steering wheel heater. If you didn't know, it's this little button down here. You press that, and the steering wheel heat comes on pretty quickly too. Oh, by the way, I didn't even mention the speakers. They're really good. especially for a sports car. So you don't even usually think about speakers in a sports car, but there is a bass set of, I think they're by Bose maybe, the bass speakers, which I have not heard, but these Burmeisters sound great. They get very loud, they're very crisp and clear. Some of the best I've ever heard in a sports car, which is awesome. What else is there? I mean, that's kind of all I really need to talk about, right? Like, you already know what you're getting into with Porsche. Build quality, excellent. Quality of materials, top notch. I could open the sunroof if I want to. I almost never do. Man, what a place. So, overall, what do I think so far? Well, I think I'm going to have this car for a long time, and I'm going to drive it for a lot of miles in that long time. If I had to rate this car, I would be giving it something like a 9.82 out of 10. There's almost nothing I would change. A lot of people say all Porsches look alike. I actually used to think that, and to be fair, they kind of do to most people. But I've gotten used to the look. I like it a lot. I love the taillight bar. I'm curious about the next generation of Turbo S, the 992.2, because it's going to be a hybrid, most likely. And that might solve the tiny bit of turbo lag that you feel. I mean, this is a twin turbo car. Don't let people tell you there's no lag. There definitely is lag, and you can decide to drive on boost if you want to and play with the paddles, but I think the hybrid might do something fun with this car. But in general, that's about it, man. This car is awesome. It's kind of unfair that a lot of cars I test have to come right after or right before I drive this thing, but I wouldn't change a thing. All right. That's about it, I think. Let me know in the comments section what else you want to know. I'll hang out and answer comments there. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Love y'all. Peace.